You know, there's a story we all know. Peter, the apostle, becomes the leader of the church. But here's the thing. History is rarely that simple. The church's foundation is filled with faith, courage, and yes, a little bit of mystery. Let's explore it together. Imagine this for a moment. The Catholic Church, which today unites over 1 billion faithful, had its beginnings not in grandeur or peace, but in oppression and chaos. Picture the streets of ancient Rome, a city bustling with political intrigue, the worship of countless pagan gods, and the looming shadow of persecution for anyone who dared to follow Christ. In this hostile world, a small group of believers clung to their faith. They weren't powerful leaders or wealthy elites. They were ordinary men and women, fishermen, outcasts, and tax collectors, facing ridicule, imprisonment, and even death. And yet, despite these overwhelming odds, their faith endured. How did they go from being a marginalized, scattered group to the official religion of the Roman Empire? Was it just luck? Or was it something more? A strategy woven together with God's providence. Here's where it gets incredible. This transformation wasn't instant. It wasn't the result of one miracle or one leader. It was the product of faith-filled decisions made by people who believed their lives were part of something greater. They didn't just survive. They built something eternal. And in the chaos, God was at work, turning their struggles into a story of hope, courage, and redemption.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered how the Catholic Church came to be? It didn't appear overnight, and it wasn't the result of a single divine command. Instead, its foundation was laid through decades, no, centuries, of human decisions. Imagine small, secret gatherings of believers, risking their lives to follow Christ, slowly shaping what we now call the Catholic Church. But here's the twist. Every step of that journey was marked by debates, conflicts, and choices that weren't always easy, and sometimes even challenged the teachings of Jesus. So what drove these men? Was it their unshakable faith? Was it a thirst for power? Or maybe it was a mixture of both? Take a moment to reflect on this with me. History isn't just a timeline of events. It's the story of people, their struggles, and their motivations. And if we dig into the story of the Church, we might find that its history is not only human, but also divine, woven together in a way that's as messy as it is beautiful. Now, I don't want to give you all the answers. Instead, I want to invite you on this journey of discovery. Together, let's explore how faith and humanity came together to shape one of the most remarkable institutions in history. What did Jesus really mean by church? Have you ever stopped to think about the implications of those words? The Apostle Peter, known as the first pope, played a central role in the early Christian community. But was establishing a church truly his intention? Let's explore this together. The scriptures tell us that Jesus said to Peter, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." These words have been the cornerstone of Catholic tradition, but they raise important questions. What did Jesus mean by church? Was he referring to a building, an institution, or something far deeper? To understand this, we need to look at the historical context. At the time, the concept of church as we know it today didn't exist. For Jesus' followers, the church was not a physical structure or even a formal institution. It was a community of believers, bound by their shared faith in Christ. So when Jesus spoke to Peter, he was likely envisioning a living, breathing community built on the foundation of faith. This interpretation has caused divisions over the centuries. Different Christian traditions have debated whether Peter's role was meant to establish a hierarchical structure or simply to serve as an example of leadership and faith. What's fascinating is that even today, these words from Jesus continue to shape how billions of Catholics view their faith and the role of the church in their lives. Think about it. Peter was a fisherman, an ordinary man called to an extraordinary mission. His leadership wasn't about building monuments or amassing power. It was about serving others and spreading the message of Christ. What does that mean for us today? How can we, like Peter, build our own church in our daily lives, a community rooted in love, service, and faith? Jesus' words to Peter are not just a historical statement. They're an invitation to all of us. They challenge us to reflect on what it means to be part of a faith community and how we contribute to its growth. So, what do you think Jesus meant? And how will you live out his vision of church in your own life?
Imagine this. You're part of a growing community of believers, united by faith, but living in a world where persecution is a constant threat. You've heard the teachings of Jesus, but there's no formal church as we know it today. Have you ever wondered where the term Catholic even came from? Here's something surprising. The Bible never actually mentions a Catholic church. The word Catholic, meaning universal, didn't even exist during the Apostles' time. It was first used by Ignatius of Antioch around the year 107 AD to describe the Christian community. So, if the apostles themselves never called it that, who decided the church should have this name? And why? Understanding this takes us back to the early years of Christianity, a time of struggle, growth, and incredible faith. Reflect on this. The name Catholic wasn't just about branding. It represented something deeper, a universal mission to unite people under Christ's message. Could knowing this inspire you to see your faith not just as personal, but as part of something much larger, something universal? A small revolutionary movement led by fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts. These were ordinary people with extraordinary faith, spreading a message that directly challenged the cultural and religious norms of their time. But their path wasn't easy. The persecution was brutal. Christians were thrown into Roman arenas, facing wild animals and cheering crowds, deemed heretics and enemies of the state. How did this marginalized group, hunted and oppressed, rise to gain the favor of emperors and eventually shape an empire? Enter Constantine the Great. Now, let's pause here and think for a moment. What kind of leader was Constantine? Was his conversion to Christianity in the 4th century purely an act of faith, or could it have been something more strategic? Here's the turning point. In the year 313 AD, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity and brought an end to its persecution. Imagine what that must have felt like for the Christians of the time, to move from hiding in catacombs to worshiping openly. It's tempting to see this as purely a divine victory, but let's dig deeper. Constantine was a visionary leader, but also a strategist. Picture a fractured empire, divided by politics, culture, and countless beliefs. Constantine saw Christianity not just as a faith, but as a unifying force. Could it be that he used religion to consolidate his power and stabilize his empire? It's not a critique, but a question worth pondering. Think about this. While Constantine's motives may have included political calculation, it doesn't diminish the profound impact of his actions. His embrace of Christianity was a pivotal moment in history. It's a reminder that God can work through imperfect people and imperfect motives to achieve extraordinary outcomes. The survival of Christianity, despite human politics and ambitions, is nothing short of miraculous. A small revolutionary movement led by fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts. These were ordinary people with extraordinary faith, spreading a message that directly challenged the cultural and religious norms of their time. But their path wasn't easy. The persecution was brutal. Christians were thrown into Roman arenas, facing wild animals and cheering crowds, deemed heretics and enemies of the state. How did this marginalized group, hunted and oppressed, rise to gain the favor of emperors and eventually shape an empire? Enter Constantine the Great. Now let's pause here and think for a moment. What kind of leader was Constantine? Was his conversion to Christianity in the 4th century purely an act of faith? Or could it have been something more strategic? Here's the turning point. In the year 313 AD, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity and brought an end to its persecution. Imagine what that must have felt like for the Christians of the time, to move from hiding in catacombs to worshiping openly. It's tempting to see this as purely a divine victory. But let's dig deeper. Constantine was a visionary leader, but also a strategist. Picture a fractured empire, divided by politics, culture, and countless beliefs. Constantine saw Christianity not just as a faith, but as a unifying force. Could it be that he used religion to consolidate his power and stabilize his empire? It's not a critique, but a question worth pondering. Think about this. While Constantine's motives may have included political calculation, it doesn't diminish the profound impact of his actions. His embrace of Christianity was a pivotal moment in history. It's a reminder that God can work through imperfect people and imperfect motives to achieve extraordinary outcomes. The survival of Christianity, despite human politics and ambitions, is nothing short of miraculous. The story of the Catholic Church's foundation is one of courage, conflict, and God's grace working through history. Picture this. It's the year 325 AD. Persecution has finally ended, and Christian leaders from across the Roman Empire gather at the Council of Nicaea. They're here to answer the most critical question of the time. Who is Jesus? Fully divine, fully human, or both? These weren't abstract debates. The future of the faith and of millions of believers was at stake. But it wasn't easy to imagine the tension in that room. Leaders who had risked their lives for Christ were now clashing over doctrine. Some stood firm, others wavered, and there were moments of betrayal. It's hard to believe, but Christians who had once been hunted and persecuted by the Romans began to turn on each other. How did the followers of Jesus, who preached love and forgiveness, end up divided? Yet even in this chaos, God was at work. Let me take you further back. Before the Bible was finalized, dozens of gospels and letters circulated among believers. Imagine being part of a small Christian community, clinging to writings that gave you hope in a hostile world. Now, imagine leaders gathering to decide which texts would become scripture and which wouldn't. These were decisions that shaped our faith, but they were made by human beings with all their flaws. They weren't just choosing words on a page. They were shaping the soul of Christianity. And it wasn't just about theology. It was about survival. The early church faced constant challenges. Groups like the Gnostics believed salvation came through secret knowledge, not faith. They saw God in ways completely different from what Jesus taught. Imagine if those ideas had prevailed. Would we even recognize Christianity today? Here's the powerful truth. Despite the conflicts, the betrayals, and the imperfections, the church endured. That's the beauty of God's plan. He works through our human weakness to bring about something greater. The decisions made at Nicaea and beyond weren't just about defining Jesus' nature. They were about anchoring the faith in a truth that could weather any storm. And here's what I want you to take away. The church's story isn't just history. It's your story. It's a story of hope, resilience, and faith overcoming obstacles. When we reflect on this, we're reminded that God has been guiding His people through every struggle, every conflict, and every question. That's the foundation of our faith. Let's journey back to the earliest days of the church and talk about Peter and his supposed primacy. Have you ever wondered why Catholic tradition holds Peter as the first pope, while historical evidence is much more ambiguous? Let's explore this together. Peter's role in the early church is undeniable. He played a significant part, as seen in the book of Acts. But here's the interesting part. Nowhere in Acts is Peter described as the absolute leader. In fact, at the Council of Jerusalem, a pivotal event in early Christianity, James, the brother of Jesus, seems to hold a more prominent position. What does that tell us about leadership in the early church? What can we learn about the dynamic between Peter and James? Take a moment to reflect. Why do you think the idea of Peter, as the rock upon which the church was founded, became so central to Catholic tradition? The answer lies in a mix of theological interpretation and institutional development over centuries. Imagine this: one of the pillars of the church might be based more on tradition than direct historical evidence. What does that mean for our understanding of faith today? Now, think about what leadership in faith means to you. Sometimes, being a leader in the church or in life isn't about holding the highest title or the most power. It's about living a life of service, as Peter did, despite his flaws and challenges. Have you ever been called to step into a role you didn't feel ready for? That's what makes Peter's story so relatable. He wasn't perfect, but he answered the call. Let's frame this discussion as a journey of discovery. The beauty of exploring church history is that it invites us to ask questions. How did theological interpretations evolve? How did the church grow from a small, persecuted community to the global institution we know today? It's in these questions that we see the humanity and divinity of the church coming together. So, the next time you hear about Peter as the first pope, remember the context. Remember the debates, the councils, and the moments of struggle that shaped this understanding. And most importantly, remember the call to serve, a call that continues to echo in our lives today. Let's continue to reflect on what it means to be a leader in faith, just as Peter was. Another fascinating aspect of early Christianity is the central role of Rome. Why did it, rather than Jerusalem where Jesus lived and died, become the heart of the church? The answer lies in Rome's dual identity as the empire's political powerhouse and a symbol of universal authority. By establishing its base there, the Catholic Church not only sought spiritual leadership, but also political legitimacy, transforming Rome into the epicenter of both faith and power. However, the path to consolidation was far from smooth. The Church's development was fraught with conflicts and challenges, including the infamous Western Schism, where at one point, 3 individuals claimed to be the legitimate pope. These internal struggles reveal a deeply human side to the Church, leaders driven by ambition and frailty, attempting to reconcile their actions with the teachings of humility and service preached by Jesus. Such moments remind us that, while the Church has a divine mission, it has always been shaped by imperfect human hands. How did these leaders navigate their weaknesses and remain true to their calling? This question continues to spark reflection and debate today. Finally, let's take a moment to consider Constantine's conversion to Christianity. On the surface, it might seem like a straightforward act of faith, but history paints a more complex picture. Imagine being Constantine, a ruler of a fractured empire, facing the daunting task of uniting people with vastly different beliefs and customs. His decision to embrace Christianity wasn't just spiritual, it was deeply strategic. While officially adopting the faith, Constantine maintained pagan practices until his final days. He was baptized on his deathbed, raising a crucial question. Was his conversion a genuine act of faith or a calculated political move? And here's the thing. This isn't just about Constantine. This is about us. How often do we make choices that are a mix of faith and pragmatism? How often do we struggle to let go of old habits while striving for something greater? Constantine's story is a reminder that God doesn't wait for us to be perfect before He works through us. Through this imperfect man, Christianity went from being a persecuted faith to a favored religion, forever altering the course of history. Now, let's zoom out. Who really built the Catholic Church? Was it Peter, the apostles, Constantine, the councils? The truth is, it was all of them. The Church's foundation wasn't laid in a single moment, but through centuries of struggle, debate, and sacrifice. Picture this: Christian leaders gathering in secret, wrestling with profound questions about faith, unity, and truth. These weren't abstract figures. They were real people, just like you and me, navigating real challenges. And here's the beauty of it. Despite all the flaws, contradictions, and human politics, God's providence was at work. It's amazing to think that something so profoundly divine could be shaped through such messy, human processes. The councils, emperors, and leaders didn't just shape an institution. They shaped a faith that has transformed billions of lives. So, here's my question for you. What does this mean for us today? How does our faith influence the decisions we make in our families, workplaces, and communities? Like Constantine, we're called to make choices that reflect both the complexities of our world and the truth of our faith. And like the apostles and early leaders, we have a role in shaping the future of our church. Let's take up that challenge with humility, courage, and trust in God's plan. Finally, let me leave you with something to think about. The Catholic Church we see today didn't just appear out of thin air or rest solely on the shoulders of one person. It's the result of centuries of evolution, of struggle, of human decisions mixed with divine guidance. That's incredible, isn't it? Think about it. Even the most powerful institutions in history began with dreams, doubts, and decisions from people like you and me. And yet through it all, the Church stands today as a testament to faith, resilience, and God's hand at work. So, here's my question for you. Knowing all this, does it make you see the Church as more divine, more human, or maybe, just maybe, the perfect combination of both? If you've been inspired by this exploration and want to dive deeper into uncovering the hidden truths and fascinating stories of our faith, join us on this journey. Subscribe to Ancient Bible Secrets and let's uncover more of these incredible mysteries together. Your faith deserves to grow in understanding, and we're here to do just that.